In this lesson, we'll learn how to place graphics into our layout using MiniBridge. Alright, so in the previous lesson, we learned how to place images into our layout using the place command, or Control-D. Now, we did that here on the outside of our brochure, and you can see that in between lessons, I've gone ahead and resized a few of these images and cropped them within the frames we drew, and made the composition a little more pleasing. Now, I want to go ahead and show you a couple more things before we move to the inside of the brochure and start using MiniBridge. Now, the first thing centers around this image right here. Now, if we look here, this large tall vase is sort of in the center of this panel, and you know, I feel like maybe it would balance better if this vase was a little bit further to the left. Maybe it was flipped horizontally. Now, that's actually something that's really easy to do here in InDesign, so let me go ahead and just select this frame. And notice here that in the control panel we have another reference point grid, and by default the reference point is set to the top left corner. Now, we talked about reference points just a little bit in the last lesson when we talked about auto fitting for frames. So I'm going to go ahead and change the reference point for this frame right here. Instead of the top left, I want that to be right in the center. So the reference point is essentially the pivot point for the frame. So if we were to rotate this frame, whatever the reference point is where it's going to rotate from. So in this case, I want to flip this frame horizontally, and there's a really easy way to do that. Up here in the control panel, we have a flip horizontal button and a flip vertical button. So I'm just going to go ahead and flip that frame horizontally, and you can see that it still fits right in between these two modules that we have here. So, and that's going to balance just a little bit better. Now, there's a couple other things I want to adjust here on the outside of our brochure. Now, we talked about auto fitting for this image right here, and I'm actually going to go ahead and turn that off for this frame. Now, we talked about drilling down and finding that under the object drop down and fitting, and then coming in and under frame options. But there's really a much easier way to enable and disable auto fitting. Now, we can't see that right now. It's actually on the control panel because my InDesign window is resized to fit within the recording area. So I tell you what, let me just go ahead and drag my control panel free. I'm going to drag that off screen just a little bit so I can resize that. And you may have this auto fit option in the control panel right here for this image. So let me go ahead and just select that image. I'm going to disable auto fit for that. Just by unchecking that box, we'll drag my control panel right back in and snap that into place here. Alright, so we've got auto fit disabled. Let's go ahead and zoom in here on our logo graphic. Now, right now this is a group, and if you remember a few lessons back, we actually pasted this group in from Illustrator. So I'm going to come in now and select the group, and if you've ever used Illustrator and you understand isolation mode, InDesign now has a feature similar to that. So instead of ungrouping these by coming to Object and choosing Ungroup, we can actually just double click on this group to select items within the group. So I'm going to go ahead and select the word in, or the letters I in here, hold down Shift and select FUSE. Let's come over to our swatches panel now and change that to paper color, so that'll stand out just a little bit more. So in doing that, notice if I deselect and zoom in here, we've actually lost the letters I in because they were white in the first place. So I want to reverse those. Now notice here that if I double click on this group, I can select that in and hold down Shift and select the I, and let's just switch those to black really fast. Alright, so we'll double click on the group again, and we'll just kind of come along here selecting several of these letters. Now, you may notice that I have my Smart Guides turned on. If you've ever used Illustrator before, you may have used Smart Guides. You can actually enable those if you want to by coming to View, Grids and Guides, and enabling Smart Guides right here. The keyboard shortcut for that is Control-U. Very handy. So I use Smart Guides quite a bit. So I'm just going to come along here, select several of these letters, and switch the color on these. Just like so. Alright, now if we switch into preview mode, you can see here that reads a lot better. So I may actually come in and change the letters I in and the color on those to something that matches a little more with the color scheme in this image here. So we can set sort of a theme for the colors in this document. Now, you may notice here that I zoom in on this image and we get a lot of pixelization here within this image. So we know that this image is higher quality than this, so this actually is a little surprising. Well, actually, this is the way InDesign is actually going to display placed images by default. It's going to do them at a fairly low-res preview of the image, just so when we get several images into this document, it's not going to slow InDesign down. If we want to view that at a higher resolution, we can come to Object, choose Display Performance, and then High Quality Display. So let's go ahead and select that here, and you can see that that image clears up quite a bit and shows it at a higher resolution. So I'm actually not going to do that for all of my images just because I don't want to slow InDesign down. But let's go ahead and move down here to the inside of our layout right now. And we're going to be using the mini bridge panel to bring in images into this layout, or into this side of the brochure. So I'm going to switch out of preview mode by hitting W, and let's go ahead and open up our mini bridge panel here by going to Window and choosing Mini Bridge. It's going to take just a moment to load up, and once you load up your mini bridge, you may actually see something similar to this. You have two options: Browse Files and Settings. Now, there's a lot of different options here. We're not going to go through all of these. I'm actually going to go back to the folder that I had browsed to here. Now, if you've ever used Bridge before, several of these options will actually look familiar to you. You have filtering and sorting options up here. You have a slider here that increases and decreases the size of the files you're previewing, or the right here in this content window. We can come up here and actually choose to show the path and even the preview pod within the mini bridge panel. So I like to keep my mini bridge rather small and something that's easy to hide. So I'm going to keep it looking just like this, and we're going to go ahead and bring in some images. So let's go ahead and select this image right here first, and I'm just going to drag that right into my layout. Now, before I do that, let me come over here. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit here, so we can get this upper left-hand portion of the inside into view right here. So, okay. Now, in the last lesson, we drug in we placed our images with our loaded cursor, just like with mini bridge here, and we can click and place the entire image in our document, or we can just draw a panel. Or excuse me, draw a frame here. Now notice that the frame is constricted to the size of the image and the dimensions of our image. So if we wanted to break free of that, we could hold down the Shift key on our keyboard as we're drawing this frame. We can draw the frame any size we want. So I'm going to draw the frame this size right here, and InDesign is going to go ahead and drop that image into the frame, leaving some space on either side of it. Now at this point, we can click on our content grabber, hold down Shift to constrain the transformation, and resize the image inside the frame, just so it fits that frame a little bit better. I'm going to go ahead and crop in on that just a little bit here, get to sort of a pleasing area within the image. And I tell you what, let's go ahead and bring in several images now. So I'm going to go ahead and click through here. Now, you may have noticed that there's actually a couple of Illustrator files in this folder that we're going to be using for the interior of the layout. And we'll get to those here in just a moment. So let's go ahead and hold down our Control key. I'm going to click this image first. Let's go ahead and click this image. And I tell you what, let's go ahead and click this image right here. And you know what, let's go ahead and click this table as well. Let's hold down Control and click that one last. I'm going to go ahead and just drag those in. And notice we get our loaded cursor, and again it has 4 images loaded into it. Now I'm going to go ahead and hold down Control and just click in my document somewhere so we're not inside mini bridge. And now we can use the arrow keys to cycle through these images and choose which image we want to place first. So I'm going to come in here now. Let's minimize mini bridge just by collapsing it just like that. We'll just get it out of the way. And let's go ahead and start drawing in some frames. I'm going to zoom in here by holding Control and Spacebar. And let's go ahead and draw in a frame right here within this module. So I'm going to go ahead and draw that in here, holding down Shift to break the dimensions of the image so we can keep the frame the size of that module. So let's go ahead and just drop in the table right down here for right now. We'll work with that here in just a moment. Holding down my Control modifier key. And I'll tell you what, let's go ahead and draw in a frame right here for this image. Again, holding down Shift. And let's go ahead and draw in a frame. Let's go ahead and draw one in right down here as well for this last image. So just hold down our Shift key again and draw this all the way out to our bleed. All right. Now let me just go ahead and zoom out here. I'll go ahead and recrop these images, resize them in between lessons just to get them to a little more pleasing composition within their frames. Now, if you remember in the last lesson, we talked about having this lamp overlap onto the back side of our cover. So in thinking about doing this, our cover panel right here is actually going to be this left panel right here. So this lamp actually needs to ride on the area between these two panels right in here. So if this panel right here was folded shut, we would see the entire lamp, both the left half on this panel and the right half on this panel. Now, my idea is to see the entire lamp when this panel's closed, but when this panel's open, we've got another file over here, an Illustrator wireframe drawing of the lamp that maybe we're going to see this once this panel opens up. So I tell you what, the first thing we need to do is come over here and make a copy of this placed image right here. Now, what I'm concerned with right now is the area that sits right on the trim line here. Not the bleed line, but the trim line. So I'm going to come in here and select this frame, go ahead and hit Control-C, and let's go ahead and come over here to our Edit drop-down menu, and let's paste it in place. The keyboard shortcut for that is Control-Shift-Alt-V. And we now have a copy of that right on top of the original. So what I want to come in and do now is I'm going to reformat. I'm going to crop in on this image some, and I'm going to crop it down to that trim line, just like so. So we have that line marked here. I'm going to go ahead and cut this now with a Control-X, and now I'm going to come down here, zoom out, and we're going to come over here to the second spread. I'm going to click anywhere on this document, and I'm going to come in and paste that in place again. Now notice we've pasted that content here into our new spread. Now the reason that I did this is so that we can get the positioning exactly right, because if the positioning with this half of the lamp and the positioning with this half of the lamp don't match up, then it's going to throw the whole effect off. So now what we can do with this frame is go ahead and stretch out this left side so we can see the entire left side of our lamp, and now we've got our placeholder right here. Remember, this was right on the trim line in the spread above, so I can just drag this over, snap that into position right here between these two panels. Alright, so now all we need to do is come in and bring in the wireframe drawing. So I'm going to go ahead and move this table out of the way. You know what, let's just crop in on that. That's an awful big frame. We'll just crop in on that. And let's come in here and drag in our wireframe drawing now. I'm just going to click on that, drag it in right about here. And let's minimize mini bridge again. And let's just click and drop that entire image right there. And we'll zoom in on that. Alright, great. Now all that's left to do is to go ahead and line these two lamps up and crop in on our wireframe lamp. So let me go ahead and switch our display performance for the wireframe lamp to high quality just so we can get the detail of that. And let's go ahead and move that over and start to line these up here. We'll get that pretty close. I may tweak that in between lessons, but that looks pretty good. So let's go ahead and drag this left side of the frame, and we'll drop that right here at that fold line, or that line between our two panels here. Now, we may need to actually resize that just a little bit, so I'm going to click on our content grabber. I'm going to go ahead and hold down Shift and drag down on this middle control just a little bit. And that looks pretty close. So I may go ahead and tweak that a little bit between lessons, as well as reformat some of the images inside these frames to crop in on the image just a little bit better. That way, when we come back in the next lesson, we'll be ready to start planning out areas of type within our layout.